Okay. Today we will cover the third module for the training course, which is the cloud infrastructure security session. This is an important module, and as we mentioned before, that there are some standards considered that the applications and data are not secure unless the infrastructure and the platform it is secure by itself. This slide, it shows you the components of the cloud infrastructure, which we will discuss during this session and till the end of the module. As you can see, we have here the physical hardware environment. This number one, physical hardware and environment. Then we will have the network component. Then we have the computing component for memory and processing, storage, hypervisor for virtualization, and finally management plan. I want you to keep this diagram in your mind while we are moving forward in the next few slides, because I will speak about each one of them in detail and give you an idea about the security threads and the security considerations which you should consider when you are evaluating cloud service providers, or if you are planning to migrate your application into a cloud service. Then, as a quick recap, we have the physical hardware and the environment. In other words, we can say the data center, this which can be considered as the data center. Then we have the networking, we have the computing for memory and processing, or you can say the servers and the storage and the hypervisor, which is representing the virtualization, and finally the management plan, which it will manage all the services components, even by the cloud service provider or the cloud service customer. Component number one for the physical environment. What is the physical environment? Of course, you know that if you want to have cloud services to be provided to your customer, this means that you need to have a data center, and this data center, it should provide physical security even from inside or outside, from outside the data center or inside the data center. For example, for the outside the data center, you need fences, you need light, you need CCTV, you need security guards. And the second concept, which we consider from internal data center, we need the redundancy for the data center, we need the cabinets, we need the security logs, we need door locks, we need security screening. These are considered the basic security and physical environment. Also here you can see that we are speaking about the external redundancy and the internal redundancy. And of course here when we are speaking about this, please don't forget that we are speaking about the data center. We are speaking about the data center, which is hosting all the servers for the applications and for the cloud computing services. As you can see, we have a redundancy from inside the data center and outside the data center. For outside the data centers, the power, it must be redundant. Just imagine if the data center power is down for any reasons, this means that whatever any service, it will not be accessed, and this is considered as the denial of service or availability. It will affect the availability concept of the security. When you will have the power substations, it's not enough to have another source of power. In some situation, by the way, you may not be able to provide this feature. In some countries, the source of the power, it may be a single company which is providing the power. For example, in Saudi Arabia, we have SCICO. SCICO is providing the electricity all over the kingdom in Saudi Arabia. Then if we don't have any other source for power, then what will be the alternative here? Of course, here, if we are working and making assessment, we have a lot of options. Number one, it may be even SCICO, they may have another power station, which it's very near to the data center, and it's independent on the main power station of the data center. Then in this case, it can be considered as another situation, another source of power. Or we can provide power generator is very important. Power generator is very important. This, it can be considered as a substitution for the power in case of a failure. And as we speak, generators and fuel tanks. Fuel tanks, it's very important, my friends. From my experience, I had one of our customers, they had redundancy for the data center, and we had the generator. It was a huge one, and we had huge fuel tanks, but unfortunately the person who is following the fuel level, he was absent, or he did not do his exercise, or whatever the reason. But by the end of the day, we found that the data center is down because the power, it was off. And when the generator starts, it starts for few hours, then the fuel, it was utilized and empty when the data center is down. Then these are the factors which, of course, as we will speak later in the module number 5 about the operations and security operations, which are considered the backbone of the success of any security solution. We will discuss this in details in module number 5. Then we have the network circuits. Network circuits here, it does not mean the LAN. Here it means the WAN, connectivity. Your network, you will not know what you will be able to connect to your network locally. This, it will be through maybe internet, it may be ADSL, it may be leased line, it may be satellite, whatever, just name it. Then we must have redundant network circuits. If one is down, the other, it will take over, and it should be capable to handle all the traffic and all the users who are trying to access the service. Building access points. The building access points, again, this again a very important concept we have to take it in our consideration, because the access points, they are considered important for these people who want to reach to the data center. It may, for example, each access point can represent risks. When in some situation we are saying it will be recommended that you will have only a single point, because this, it means that you are minimizing the risks. We are minimizing the risks. But in some situations, we are saying it will be better to have another door. It may be closed, but in case if there is a fire or disaster or anything like that, then it can be opened and used by the staff when they can quit the location, and it will not affect their health or life. Also, cooling infrastructure. Cooling, it's very important. As you know, if the temperature of the devices are very high, it will be disconnected in some situations. In some devices, electronic devices, especially the modern one, when the temperature increases, then a specific degree, you will find that it will be disconnected. I faced this case before with my iPhone. I forgot my iPhone in the car for more than 5 or 6 hours, and when I try to turn on the mobile, it gave me a message that the temperature is over 50 degrees and it will not be able to start. It will take some time. Then I turn on the AC, I put it in front of the AC. After 3 or 4 minutes, it starts to work. And this is a condition for the new and the electronic devices. When it reaches to a specific degree, temperature in some situation, it may be terminate the operation, or unfortunately, it may be terminated. These are the points which you have to take it in your consideration when you are designing the data center for the cloud service provider for external redundancy. Now we have the internal redundancy, power distribution points. Of course, you must have redundant power distribution points for all the cabinets. Each cabinet must have more than one distribution point, power distribution point, power feeds to racks, cooler, the chillers and units. Of course, the AC is very important. Also, the devices which manage the humidity. The devices which are managing the humidity are very important. You must have a redundant solution for these devices. Networking. Here, networking means the LAN, the internal network, where the servers, switches, virtualization, storage, all of them are connected. The LAN. Storage units. Folks, by the end of the day, you are a cloud service provider. You are providing data, application and data. Then the storage units must be redundant. And in some situation, you will find in enterprise cloud service providers, we are replicating the data from one side to another side. When if the main data center or production data center is down, the other one, it will take over, and the data, it's already replicated. Then the user, he will not feel any downtime. He may feel a mess in the performance, but it will never stop. Finally, the physical access points, as we discussed and explained in the building access point in the external redundancy concept. These are the points which you have to consider for the physical environment or the data center. Okay, now we will speak about another component, which is the computing. I really appreciate your concentration here, because this is very important, and this it will make a big difference to understand the concept here, because this will help you too much when you are trying to make an agreement with the cloud service provider. We have 3 different definitions. Reservations, limits, and shares. These are very important terminology and definitions in cloud computing hosting. What are the reservations? Reservations, it is the minimum guarantee level of resources will be assigned to the customer. Reservation, it is the minimum amount of resources which it will be guaranteed to the customer. For example, we will say that I am a customer, I have rent one server with 4 processor and for example 16 GB RAM, 16 GB RAM, and for example 10 terabyte hard disk. This server, it's saying that this is the server, it will be great and it can handle my operations. But for some reasons, the cloud service provider, he is saying that he may not be able to provide all these settings. or this configuration. Then he will say the reservation, it will be in the form that, okay, your server, it should have this 4 processors, 16 GB RAM, 10 GB, 10 terabyte. But if I'm not able to provide it because for some reasons the shared resources pool cannot support the customer's requirements, and we are out of resources for some dynamic traffic exchange or increase, then what we will have, we guarantee as a cloud service provider that we will provide you 2 processors, whatever the conditions we have, 8 GB RAM and maybe 5 terabyte. Then this, it will be the minimum guarantee configuration will be provided for you. This, which we call it reservations. These values, which we are called reservations. Of course, this is very important to be mentioned in the SLA, because what is happening? Usually, when you are doing the agreement with the cloud service provider, you don't understand all these things. Usually, you will find an architect for Amazon, for Google, for Microsoft Azure, or whatever the cloud service provider which you want to use, or maybe a local one in your area. You will have some architect engineers who will provide you the solutions. In some situation, they may not explain to you everything in details. And of course, if you have this scenario that we don't guarantee 4 processors, 16 GB RAM, 10 terabyte, then we will, it will be a little bit cheaper than fully guarantee these resources. And of course, you will be very happy because this, it will be cost-effective solution. It will not be expensive, but when you will reach to the level that all the processors, or I mean the resources in your servers are utilized and you need extra, you will find that even you are not able to get the values which you agreed about. Then here the problem. But we are telling you this, it will be cheap solution. Okay, but we have to act smart. If my application requires 4 processors, 16 GB RAM, 10 terabyte, then this, it should be the reservation. This, it will be minimum. Then I can require 5 processors, 32 GB RAM, 20 terabyte. If I have more resources, it will be great. If I don't use it, I will not pay for it. But the minimum reservation, it must be the resources which are recommended by the application to run your application. I mean, recommended by the vendor of your application. Okay, what are the limits? Limits, it is opposite to reservations. Opposite to reservation. Reservation, we are the minimum resources guaranteed by the cloud service provider to be provided into the cloud service customer. Limits, we are the maximum. We are the maximum resources provided by cloud service customer, cloud service provider to the cloud service customer. Why? Why do we have limits on the resources which are used by the customer? As we mentioned in day number 1 in the characteristics of the cloud service provider, that it is on-demand, self-service, and dynamic expansion. Then this means that if I am having a server with 2 processors and I have a marketing campaign, or I have a new product and there are a lot of people want to buy it, and I need more resources as processor and memory to handle the number of the visits which we have it to the website, then automatically I can reserve all these resources from the application or from the from the cloud service provider, and increase these services until it reaches to the point which I require. Then my application, it will run smoothly. Why do I have to introduce the limits? Why? This, it may affect the application. Now I have 4 processors, I need 8, but if the limits it's 6, then I will not be able to get the 8. Then this means that it can represent problem, but again, it is important. Why? What do you think? Do you have any suggestion? Why do we need this limits? Any answer?
Maybe to avoid the overusage of the machine or the equipment.
To avoid what?
Overusage. To avoid overusage.
Okay, but why do you want to avoid the usage?
Maybe it can be damaged.
Okay. Any other answer? Okay. Do you remember yesterday, my friends, when I told you in some situation, if there is any hacker he want to utilize the applications or he want to make some problems to the network, what he have to do? Just he will join the cloud service provider as a normal user, and he will implement an application. Each application, it will utilize processor and memory. And now the server, it has two processors, 8 GB RAM. When this process, it will utilize all the resources. Then it will ask for additional resources, and we will go to the closed loop. And this closed loop, it may utilize all the resources from the shared pool of the cloud service provider. And this, it will be considered as a problem. It will be considered as a denial of service, because when the legitimate users want to access the resources, we will not be able, because these resources are, all of them are reserved by the hacker. When we have the limits here, the limits, it will protect us, because if we reach to the limit, now I say maximum 8 processor, maximum 64 GB RAM. When this machine, it will reach to these values, it will not assign any more values for the this VM, and this, it will be considered as a protection for the resources of the cloud service provider. Okay, then this is the benefit of the limits. Shares. What is shares? Shares, this, you know, when we are saying that we have a cloud service provider, we have a cloud service provider, and the cloud service provider, he is serving a lot of customers. We have a lot of customers here. And all these customers, now we have a load, it may be end of year, you know, in some situation, you may have some season where there is a discount in the market for whatever, it may be clothes, maybe food, maybe furniture, whatever it is. You will find seasons that we have a discount from 20 to 70%, or we have discounts for 70, for 50%, and so on. This, it will be considered as a load on the traffic. It will be considered load on the traffic, and all the server customers, you will find all of them required resources. All of them require resources, because all of them, we have online web services, and we want to serve their users and to serve their customers. When we start to ask for resources, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, for example, 9 on this host, and all of them require additional processor and memory. But processor and memory, it will not be large enough to be support all these requirements. What will happen? Who will get it? Is it who will get the resources? Is it host number 9, or in other words, customer number 9, or customer number 7, or customer number 4, or customer number 1? I don't know, it depends. But when we'll have the share, it will be as a priority. If you will say that, okay, we will have priority, that the priority, it will be مثلا, for example, 4, 2, 3. Then whatever any requirement by number 4, VM number 4, he should take. And this, it will then be number 2, okay, you will have second priority, number 3, third priority, and all this, it will be the resources, it will be divided between the different VMs based on the shares. Based on the shares. Then this shares value, it will be used when the resources are utilized and there are a large request on the resources, and the resources are not enough to satisfy the requirements of for all the VMs. Then in this case, the cloud service provider, he will follow the concept of the shares, and he will say, okay, I have VM4, we have highest share, then I will provide him this value, number 2, then number 3, and so on. These are the values of the cloud computing, which you have to understand very well, because you have to negotiate it with your cloud service providers when you're doing some agreements. I think we have a short comment for effective using of machine. Okay, I think we answered this techno. This is not for effective using of machine, but to protect the security. Protect the, protect the VMs and the resources from hackers if they are trying to utilize it through VMs. Okay, visualization. The second component, virtualization, and just I want to go back a little bit to remind you with a very important slide. This is a slide which I want to remind you with. You remember when we said that we have the physical environment, data center, we have the network, we have the computing, we have the storage, we have the hypervisor, we have the management plan. These are the components which we are discussing right now. And now we will discuss the hypervisor. And as we mentioned yesterday, we have two types of hypervisor, which is type 1 and type 2. Type 1, this is the hypervisor where you have the host. Here, this is the host, and you have the virtualization software. It will be installed on the host direct. Then the operating system, it will comes on the top of the virtualization. And the type 1, the type 2, it will be there will be some difference. That the type 2, we have this is the host, and you will have the operating system here first. Then you will have the virtualization software. And of course, as we explained, the type 1, it's more secure, because the type 1, the virtualization, it's in direct contact here, as you can see with the host. It's not affected by any operating system or whatever, but in type 2, that the virtualization and the host are connected through the operating system. If there is any bugs or problems or unupdated patches or whatever in the operating system, it will affect the virtualization. Andy is asking, is Hyper-V type 2 Oracle box or VMware? No. VMware, Hyper-V, and KBS, I cannot remember the one, we are type 1. Others are type 2. The others are type 2. VMware, by the way, we have another virtualization. It can be used as a type 2, but this is not popular used in cloud service providers. They are used only on desktops. And for example, on my machine, if I want to have the virtualization or I want to run Linux, then I have to run this VMware software. and this VMware software or Citrix software or whatever, I will run it on the Windows, and when it will be installed, it will be open. I will define a server, then I will install the Linux from a CD or internet or whatever, and I can run Linux over Windows. This is considered type 2. But whatever the virtualization, which it will run direct on the host, it will be considered type 1, and it's more secure. Whatever the virtualization which is run on operating system, it will be considered type 2, and it depends upon the operating system itself. Is that the vSphere? Yes, it is the vSphere. You are right. Okay. Management plan. Management plan, it is very important component for the cloud service customers and cloud service providers. What is management plan? Management plan, my friends, it's application program interface. It is application program interface, API. This API, it will give you an interface to the cloud service provider services. When you can provision a server, you can create a server, you can upgrade the resources, you can add more storage, you can add more servers, devices, whatever. Then the management plan, this is considered as the interface between the customer and the cloud service provider infrastructure. You remember when we explained in first day about the cloud computing characteristics, that it is self-service, and I told you that you can provision a server within few minutes without interaction of the cloud service provider at all. Just you have to open the browser, type the URL of the management plan. It will ask you what you want to do. I want to provision a server. What is the configuration, number of processors, number of RAM, and the storage size. Then immediately you are able to install it. And in some situation, it may be a template where you have to define the server and you have to define the operating system as well. Then these are the management plan. Then the management plan, this is an interface which it will provide you the management of the cloud service provider infrastructure as a client, of course as a client, not as a cloud server. You will not be able to manage switches, routers, devices. No, this is not the management plan at all. The management plan, this will be provided to the customer. Then they can manage their infrastructure, or to create new servers, to delete servers, to create some hardware devices. I want to use multiple servers with a load balancer. Then I can log in and define my load balancer, some IP addresses, what are the authorizations which I have to configure it, the authentication type. Of course, management plan, it is highly recommended, and I don't want to say mandatory, but frankly speaking, this is what I consider. It's mandatory to use 2FA. It's mandatory to use 2FA. It is very critical. If there is any hacker, he can take a control of the management plan. Just imagine what he can do with the multiple VMs for the users and for the customer, the applications, the data. This will be real crisis. And these are the security issues which you can take it in your consideration for the management plan. Okay. We want to start another component for the cloud platform and infrastructure protection, which is the design and the plan security controls. How you can design and plan the security controls. Now you have a data center, you want to protect your data center, you want to protect the infrastructure, and of course it requires some security controls. What are the popular security controls which we can utilize it? Number one, the physical and the environment protection. Physical and the environment protection, as I told you, this is by the end of the day, it's a data center. When the data center, if we say that this is the data center, we have to provide protection for outside the data center. For outside the data center, for example, we may need fences, we may need pillars, we may need a light, security guard, and so on. Inside the data center, you may need CCTV, you need motion detection, you need log security guard for screening the visitors and the people who are logging inside the data center. These are the important physical protection. For the environment protection mainly it will be highlighted as HVAC. HVAC, humidity, voltage and AC, humidity, voltage and AC. This it will be a protection for the AC and the humidity control. AC and humidity control. You know that the AC is very important for security, electronic devices. Humidity control also is very important because if its humidity is very high, then it can create electrical shocks, and if it's low, it can create static, and both of them are dangerous for the electric devices. Andy, he is asking a question. Hello, are you recommending 2FA or MFA? Recently, I was able to hack Office 365 email with 2FA using evil Linux software in the research I did recent before my graduation. Okay, what do you recommend, 2FA or MFA? Look, I am afraid that the cloud service provider will provide the 2FA only, because by the end of the day, what is the difference between 2FA and MFA? We have in the authentication, we have 3 factors, which are something you know, something you are, and something you have. These are the 3 factors. Then when we are saying the factor 2FA or MFA, 2FA means that you are choosing 2 of them. Then even in the banks, you will see that we are using 2FA, even in the banks, which is considered most secure location after the military and police stations. You will find that we are using 2FA because 2FA, it will be something you have, no password, and something you have, it may be email or SMS. But to use MFA in this case, MFA, multiple FA, in some situation, by the way, there are a lot of people, they are using the 2 terminology as the same, MFA as 2FA. Yeah, when they are saying MFA means the 2FA, but again, as technical people, we are technical people who are saying MFA, this means that you are using these 3 factors. And by the end of the day, depends upon the cloud service provider, what is he providing. Is it 2FA or MFA? Of course, from my point of view, if I have MFA, it will be better, but this it will be a crisis. In some situation, it will not work. Just imagine why it will not work. I will not be able to use the MFA with the management plan. Let me go back to the management plan. Here, management plan, as we mentioned, what is a management plan? Management plan, it is an interface which you have to access it over the internet. Then you will be able to create provision a server. I want to provision a server, and the management plan, for example, it is amazonconfig.com, for example. Okay, it makes sense that I can use something you know, which is password, something you have, which it may be token or maybe SMS or email. Of course, token, it will be very difficult, but it SMS or email. But how you will use the MFA? How you will use biometrics? How you will use biometrics? This it will be very difficult. You will not be able to use it. Biometrics, this means that you have a device, it may be fingerprint, it may be eye print, it may be iris print, it may be signature, dynamic signature, you know. This it will not be easy to be provided over the remotely. This it will not be easy to provide remotely. Then I think this it will not be workable, except if you have, for example, in your PC, in some notebooks, there may be, you know, some smart cards or memory card reader. It can read the card Yes, it have, but can you guarantee that all users have the same feature? Of course not. I cannot. I am working with the world. Even if I am in USA and we are rich, we have some machines which it may have high-end configuration. Again, I may work with other countries which are considered poor and we don't have these features. And from my point of view, no, I don't think that the 2FA, it will be MFA, it will be the right option. 2FA, it will be more practical. This is my يعني brainstorming with you. If you have other opinion, please share it with us. And of course, my friends, I am here reading the chat. Then if you want to know what are the questions which were asked, you can read the question. There was a question from Andy, and this it was my answer. I hope that I answered the question, Andy. If you have any other opinions or suggestions, please let's discuss it together. Okay, then as we mentioned, the physical and environment protection, then we have system and communication protection. We have to protect our systems and communication. Of course, it's very important. This is the infrastructure, now how we can provide the data and application in as based on best practices, and if I am not providing the security protection for the systems and communication. This it will be very important. When the systems, it should be protected. If I have servers, I must have firewall, host firewall on the system itself. I'm not speaking about network right now. I'm speaking about systems. Protecting systems is very important, my friends. Please take in your consideration an important issue. When we are speaking about systems here and servers in cloud service provider, it is very critical. Really, it is very critical. And it's considered as a nightmare for security people. Why? If you are in a data center and if you want to take control over a server or hack a server, in other words, you have to reach to the server. Maybe physical access, or it may be have a control over the internet through TSR or API, or just name it, whatever. I will follow the reconnaissance phase, then I will check what are the open ports, open IP addresses on the network. I will fingerprint operating system, fingerprint the applications. I will know what is the version of the application itself, and I'll start to search for the bugs for these applications, and in this case I will try to compromise the data and the application. This is the technique, and I think these people who attend CEH course for certified ethical hacker, we have a clear methodology for the hacking process. But just imagine in the cloud environment, or not cloud, in virtualization, that the server, it is matter of a file, my friends. It is a file, just a file. Then even if the server is down, I can compromise the server. Even if the server is down, I still can compromise the server. If I able to override the file and put another image, or not image, another file, and this another file which it represents the image of the server, and it has some malicious software which I inserted in this file, then when the server it will start, it will get this file up and running. You are infected because you have some attacks or whatever, which it was added to the image of the operating system. Then here the system, you must have your methodology to protect the systems. First of all, you have to make a baseline. You have to make a baseline. And this, if you are aware about Amazon, frankly speaking, I don't know Google, but I had a course with Amazon. And in Amazon, when you will open or you try to provision a server, it will ask you which operating system do you want to install also. Then this impact will provision a server. It has a baseline image, clean image, and this clean image, it will be used to install the operating system on the server. Then, and with all the necessary security controls. It may be host IPS, it may be host firewall, it may be anti-malware, it may be whitelisting or white and blacklisting applications, whatever the security controls which you are looking for, even it's a baseline configuration, or it may be added to you as you request from the cloud service provider where you will pay for it. And these are the points which you have to take in your consideration. And please, this is not only for cloud, this even for virtualization. But even if you are working in your company and you have virtualization, these concepts, it will be the same. It's exactly the same. You have to follow this exactly the same. Baselines, it's very important. Images, are very important. And you have to keep all this under monitoring, under updates. Then you make sure that you are uploading the patches as recommended by the vendors and the manufacturer. Okay, the other point here, communication protection. We have to protect the communication. Of course, communication, how to protect the communication, it's encryption. We don't have, of course, we have other thing which we have to take into our consideration, the access control. Access control, you remember the AAA, the authentication, authorization, and accounting. This is very important. Because if you are not properly authenticate the user and authorize the user, then this means that you are not protecting your communication. But if you are providing a proper access control and encryption, then this means that you have a proper communication protection. There is a note in the chart. You are absolutely correct. Okay, thank you. Okay. Then the other point, it is the virtualization systems protection. Virtualization systems protection, as we mentioned that if the hacker, he was able to control one hypervisor, then this means that he will be able to control the host, he will be able to control the VM, he will be able to control all the resources used by the customers, data and applications. And unfortunately, in some situations, there is a trust between multiple hypervisors, because if one of the hypervisor is down, then the cloud service provider, he is configuring the servers to be, or the VMs to be migrated into other hypervisor. Then again, the hacker, he can take the control on other hypervisor and other VMs and so on. Then virtualization here, the recommendation that you have to work very close with the virtualization manufacturer. If you're having VMware, then you have to work with VMware. If you're having Citrix, with Citrix. If you have Azure, Microsoft, whatever, then this will be very important that you have to work very close with manufacturer to implement all the requirements as they are recommended to protect their applications. Also, you can have your own controls. You can have, you know, that most of the security devices now, the manufacturer, they are providing the image. Then just what you have to do, if you have, for example, let's say Palo Alto firewall or ASA, Cisco firewall, or just name it. When you will tell him that I have a virtualization, we will tell you, okay, no problem. We have an image. Provision a server, install this image, and when you are up and running, you have a firewall, although it is not the appliance itself, but it has the same capabilities and the appearance. This again, it can be used for virtualization systems where it can manage traffic between multiple VMs. If you are provisioning multiple VMs for your operations, or if it move traffic or exchange between one zone to another zone over the network, and so on. Identification, authentication, and authorization. This, which we call it IDM, Identity Access Management, Federation. Federation, it's a very important concept, gentlemen, and this it will be very helpful. Tell you something. Let me tell you something. Now I have my credentials over the internet. Okay, I have my credentials over the internet, and my credentials for accessing the organization resources. And I have another credentials for accessing the CRM applications for the, what we can say, I'm really sorry, I forget the name, Salesforce. Then this means that I have multiple credentials, multiple username and passwords. And this is considered, from, again, my experience, it's considered a crisis. Why? I'll tell you why. Users, they don't remember their passwords, unfortunately. Especially if we are, as a security administrators, we are forcing them to choose a strong password. 8 characters, alphanumeric, caps lock, special characters, and all this stuff. Then we find here what we have to do. Or what we have to do. We have to, if we are smart, we can write this password on their mobiles or on a paper and keep it locked in their drawer, or in some situation we will get a yellow sticker, put all these passwords, stick it on the monitor. Believe it or not, this happened. It happened, and we saw these scenarios. And even when you will try to speak to someone of them, he will tell you, I don't want to do any harm for my organization, but I am an old man and I don't have a memory. I am forgetting the passwords every time I have to call the service desk to reset the password. The people in the service desk, they wait up, they don't want to provide me any service. They are not answering my phones. Then you will find that you are sitting crying next to him and you don't want to, don't know what to do. But now, just imagine we have only one single password. One single password. How this it can be done? Okay, let's have this scenario. Now I have the organization. This is my organization. This is my company. This company is called XYZ. And we have here Active Directory. I don't know, I'm not able to control the mouse properly today, but sorry for that. I have here Active Directory, and I have all the username and passwords and all the attributes. It's stored on the Active Directory. Now I have only a single password, which is, we call it single sign-on. We call it single sign-on. This means that you have to type only your username and password once, as we are doing in Windows. Windows supports single sign-on because it uses Kerberos. Kerberos supports single sign-on. When if you type the username and password, it will be stored in form of token, and you don't need to every time to type username and password when you are trying to access different resources. Then the Active Directory, it has the username and the password, and we are accessing the application. We are happy. The management, they tell you, okay, we will provide you a new CRM application over the internet. It's called Salesforce, and the username and password, you'll say, oh my God, I have to create a second username and password. They will tell you, no, don't worry. We don't want you to create any username and password. Just use the old one. Okay, really? I don't need to create? No, you don't need it. Then how it will work? In this case situation, my friends, which we call it federation. What is federation? CRM here in Salesforce, we have again authentication server, right, for authentication and authorization and accounting. We will create something called trust relationship between this server and our server. That the AAA server of the CRM, it will trust our server. Then what will happen? We have a user sitting here in the organization. He wants to access the information for the users on the CRM. He will send a request. Then the server, it will ask him for username and password. He will send the username and password. Then this server, it knows that this username and password, it is hosted in the Active Directory service. Then it will send the username and password, which is it received into the Active Directory and say, hey, this username and password, is it correct or not? Yes, it's correct. Okay, thank you very much. Is it authorized to access the application, the CRM? Yes, it's authorized. Then it will send him a request that yes, he is allowed. Then in this case, the user, he will be able to access the CRM. Then by the end of the day, although he is trying to access a different server in a different site, in a different country, in whatever, but by the end of the day, we have a trust or federation, and we will still use the Active Directory of our organization or whatever any authentication server it will be used for accessing the service. Okay, this which we call it federation. Okay, identification, as we mentioned, identification before, it's who are you? I am Osama. Authentication, prove your identification. As we clarified now, we can make the authentication by something you know, something you are, something you have, or a strong authentication. Then we have authorization, what you are allowed to do on the network. These are the identification, authentication, and authorization. Please, my friends, it is very important to make your assessment properly for the IEEE. IEEE, it is very important. It is not just a matter of username and password, because there are a lot of attacks which are based on the IEEE. It may be man-in-the-middle attack. It may be session hijacking. It may be a lot of things. And please, it's very important to take care about these things. We have a question in the chat from Andy. He's asking, is federation service introduced by Microsoft when they deployed Windows Server 2003 for the first time? Andy, I'm not sure about this. I'm not sure if the first organization who announced this service, it was Microsoft or others, but just what I can confirm to you that now we have an open protocol, which is called Summit. Protocol. And Summit Protocol, it's an open protocol. It can be used with Microsoft products or non-Microsoft products. And it has some components as identity provider. We have service provider, we have the user. Also, you have the Microsoft, we have their own product, which is called ADFS. It's called Active Directory Federation Services. This is used with Microsoft products, and this is it's used as open protocol, and it can usually this is the standard. This is the standard with all the other applications and services. In some situation, we have other protocols. It's called Open ID. Open ID, it is used for authentication, and we have O authentication, it is used for authentication only, and we have Open ID and Open ID Connect, and it will be used for authentication and authorization. These are the open protocols which you can utilize it in your products without any licenses, because we are open protocols. But the most common one, it is the SAML. This is the standard. Whatever any product in the market, you will find it support the SAML. Okay, thanks. You are most welcome. Okay. The last topic which we have to discuss now before going for a break, the audit mechanisms. The audit mechanisms, it's very important, as we mentioned, that auditing is very important, because this will help you to collect the data, and it will be approved for all your activities. This information, it can be integrated, or it can be imported into your SIM solution. This will be very helpful for correlation, to understanding the nature of your application, nature of the services, and if you have any attacks or trying for any attacks, this will be very important. The log collection can be in form of SNMP, Simple Network Management Protocol. It can be for in syslog, or it can be in some situation using a client, where there's a client, it will be installed on a server, collect the information and send it into the SIM server or the log server. These are very important. Again, you have to define this very carefully in the service level agreement. If your organization requires these features, you have to make sure and define the RACI, who is responsible for collecting this data, how the data it will be collected, or the logs it will be collected, how the logs it will be sent to your network. In some situation, we are saying, okay, if the logs it will be very huge, and if I move it over the internet, it may be decrease the performance. When in some situation, okay, I will have another VM and install my SIM over the VM in the cloud service provider, and I will have the log collections and packet capturing in this server, in the VM server, and I will have a control over this server myself as a customer. This again, it's acceptable solution. By the end of the day, you have to check what is suitable for you. We don't have here a right answer and a wrong answer. If I want to have the SIM inside or outside the cloud service provider, it's not suppose that you have a slow bandwidth. Then what you have to do to say, no, I must have it inside, then in this, it's the wrong decision. Then the right decision, it will be in the cloud service provider, and just you can use the interface to check the logs. If you have a good bandwidth and you have fast connection, then it's okay, and you can migrate the data. Then to have it in on-site be a good option, and so on. Then you have to do, again, what we said, you have to do the assessment. You have to do the assessment. Again, I will repeat this many times. Assessment, my friends. Moving applications into the cloud, it's not a fork left. Unfortunately, we found a lot of organizations. Okay, wow, it's this great. Yalla, move the application. We don't want the operations. This it will be a headache, so and so. And finally, we will find a lot of problems due to performance, due to security issues, especially as we will discuss later in the application security. Most of the applications, we are not caring about security controls which are built in the application, and it depends upon the compensation controls in the data center and in the network. But in this case, if these security controls are not provided as is from the data center into the cloud provider, the cloud service provider, this means that your application is not secure. Okay.
Progress.
Okay. The other component in the cloud infrastructure security is the disaster recovery and business continuity management planning. Disaster recovery and business continuity, it is a very important concept, and you have to take it in your consideration, because even the disaster recovery as a cloud service provider or as cloud customer, Cloud service provider, we must provide business continuity, disaster recovery for infrastructure. When if the production data center is down, the other data center, it should take over, and the user, he will not feel any downtime in the services and application. Or from cloud service customer point of view, he can use the cloud service as a disaster recovery site. And the advantage here that you will not pay anything, because as we agreed that you are paying as you use. Then if you are not using the resources, you will not pay anything. Then if the production data center is down, then all the services, it should be migrated into the cloud service provider. And in this case, you start to pay. When the disaster recovery and business continuity, you can think about it from two different points, from as a cloud service customer and as a cloud service provider. Cloud service provider, we must provide the disaster recovery for the production side, and the customer, we can have a disaster recovery on the DR as an alternative for online or on-prem disaster recovery site. In disaster recovery and business continuity planning, you have to understand very important concept that you are not working on-prem data center. It's a cloud environment, and it has a lot of issues which are totally different from the issues of the data center. And for example, if you have a data center and we speak about DR, then in the data center you must have a DR. With DR, it will cost you a lot of money, efforts, operations, and so on. But in the cloud environment, DR does not cost you anything. If you have your application, it's already running on the DR, then the DR, it's a part of the cloud service provider, and he, in such situation, will provide you 4 nines, 3 9, 5 nines, whatever the value of the availability or percentage of availability which he can provide. Also, in the cloud environment, the data is under your control, and you can make a backup, you can make archive, you can save it offsite, and so on. But in the cloud environment, it's not under your full control. The data, it should be replicated by the cloud service provider, and backup, process, archiving, and all this stuff, it should be managed by the cloud service provider. Then you have to work very close with the cloud service provider if you want to have the disaster recovery or business continuity planning and management for your applications. Also, you have to understand the business requirements. As security people, we are business enablement. We have to enable the business. We have to provide the business the requirements to be able to support these services. Then, if I want to have a disaster recovery, I have to understand the business requirements. Of course, the business, we have to do their exercise first. We have to make BIA, which is called business impact analysis. We have to make a risk management, risk assessment, then to understand what are the critical services which you want to be able to fill over into the DR side, and what is the RTO, what is the RBO, and what are all this information which are related to the business. And do we have enough experience to do this exercise or not? If we don't have it, then this means that we can hire a partner to do the exercise, or to help our team in the exercise, or we can hire new staff who are have a good experience in this exercise, and we can manage it and manage its operation in the future as well. Also, you have to understand the risks. Of course, whatever anything in our life, it has risks. These risks, it can be related to the operations, related to availability, whatever the risks which we may have it for business and management and disaster recovery. But again, it will be very important to have a risk assessment. I have to understand the risks. I have to understand the assets. I have to understand the value of the assets. I have to understand vulnerabilities. I have to understand threats. I have to understand the existing controls. I have to understand the probability or likelihood of the risk. I have to understand the impact. Then it will define the risk level. Based on the risk level, I can define the risk treatment. Based on the risk treatment, I can define the security controls, which it will provide me the protection for my assets and achieving business goals and objectives. This is the loop for designing the business continuity. And by the way, this is based on the ISO 22301. 22301, ISO 22301. Number one, you have to define the scope. What is your scope? In some situation, you may find that the business, we are saying, okay, our scope for the business, it will be maybe a specific application, a specific location, it may be some parts of services and so on. Then what will be our scope? This scope, it's not defined by us as a technical team. It's not defined by us as a security team. Defined by the management. The management, we have to tell you, yes, we are caring about the disaster recovery for all the services, or for specific services. You have to define what are the requirements. You have to make an interview with the management, interview with the service owner, sit with them, understand the service, understand the requirements. Some situation you may find applications which are integrated together. Without this integration service, it will not work properly, and so on. Then you have to make, because for requirements, you have to analyze these requirements. If the requirements are practical, they can be achievable or not. In some situation, you will find that each one, they will give you their dreams, and these dreams, as a technical people, we are able to do anything. But by the end of the day, it depends upon money. At the end of the day, it depends upon money. It depends upon budget. Yes, I can provide you 24/7 by 365 availability, but this it will cost you. Then when we will tell them that this it will cost 10 million, they will tell you, no, okay, then we don't want to have 24/7. Let's have 16/7 or during working hours, for example. Then you have to define the requirements, gather the requirements, analyze the requirements, make sure that these requirements are practical, it can be achievable, and this is easy to be achieved by the technical designs or not. Then you have to make the risk assessment. You have to make the risk assessment. Risk assessment here, it will be very important. The risk assessment, you have to make risk assessment. What are the risks which are threaten the disaster recovery and business continuity? Then you can be able to develop the security controls to protect. After you define you understand the requirements, you analyze it, you know that they are practical, they can achievable, you know the risks, you have these, you define the security controls, then you can design the solution. I can have on-site, I can have a cloud, then this means that you will be able to design, make the design, redundancy, and so on, and implement it, then test it. Of course, if the DR test is very important. DR without testing does not mean anything, because we cannot guarantee that everything it will be up and running during the disaster. But the test is very important, because the test, it will provide you the experience, and you will discover all the bugs in your disaster recovery plans, and it will give the confidence for the disaster recovery team in fail over the services, and we will know exactly what will be the procedures, especially during the disaster. We are under stress, and there are a lot of follow-up from the management and the users if the services are up and running or not. Then after the testing and make sure that everything is running fine, we have to report all the work progress to the management, whatever, if there are any points to be improved, and provide additional services or fine-tuning, including the revise of the solution. Revise of the solution, of course, this will be very important, because based on the testing and the reporting and the management feedback, you can revise it if you will find that the objectives are not defined properly, or objectives are not achieved, or you still need more efforts in some areas, or fine-tuning, or whatever, any changes, and especially in documentation as well. But all this, it will be done in the revised state. We finished the module for the cloud infrastructure security.